All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a special edition of SaberSim's DFS Office Hours. It is Monday, October 31st, Halloween of 2022. Got dressed up for you guys today. Hope you enjoy it. Trying to put a smile on everybody's face tuning in to the stream today. So I hope that, you're all dressing up and having a good time today. Be able to get in some trick-or-treating in between DFS late swaps. But nevertheless, this is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer all questions that come in via YouTube chat or via the Office Hours channel in Discord. If you're not a member of our Discord, be sure to click the link below. That'll get you access to our Discord. A lot of great conversation going on in there all the time, strategy related, any and all questions. The team's always around, a lot of sharp people in the community. But that being said, we're going to get going today. First thing is first, we got to get started with the weekly max challenge. If you're not aware of what the weekly max challenge is, I'm going to pull it up on screen here for you. So one quick second. But it's basically, a giveaway that we've been running all NFL season, giving away awesome prizes. And actually, one thing I wanted to show everybody was that our first winner who took down the mini max 12-pack abs just recently received his championship belt that we ordered him. So wanted to bring this on the screen for everybody. That way you can get a look at what you are participating for every week. First out of 297,265 12-pack abs, customized belt, looks just awesome, came out really good. So, this is what you guys are participating for every week. If you do indeed take down the mini max, I know we already had two other Bink winners, so their belts are in production, on the way. Get in on the action. Still a lot of time in the NFL season, just coming up on about halfway through the season, giving out awesome prizes each and every week. So that being said, we're going to go and give our first prize away, which is going to be the randomly selected winner for the free entries into next week's mini max. So I was looking, we have 137 people that max entered this week. We're going to hit the shuffle a couple times, and then we are going to spin for 3 tickets to next week's mini max. And the winner is Calvin Doves. Calvin Doves, congratulations, winning the entry to next week's mini max. We will reach out to you and make sure that you get your tickets. And last but not least, our highest scorer for this week was Seminole DFS. Seminole came in 6th in the large mini max with a score of 263.58. Congrats, Seminole. We're going to get you your prizes as well. So Seminole will get 1 free month of SaberSim Advanced, a t-shirt, and an entry into our end of the season free roll. Congratulations to the winners. Continue to participate, and hopefully you guys can get in on the action and get all of these awesome prizes. But, if you're like, hey, I want to get in on the action, I don't know where to sign up. If you jump into our Discord channel in the NFL, there is a thread pinned with the link to join the max challenge. So that's where that can be found. But that being said, we're going to get back to our normal awesome hours here. So coming back to SaberSim, going to get this up on the screen. Not that many questions in the queue, everybody. I know we have the time change this week, so a little different from what we've been doing in the past. So if you guys have questions, get them in now. We're going to, keep rolling with the stream. So that being said, first question today came in from SMH1102 in Discord. Gonna get this over here. Said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Jordan said in one of the videos that it's less risky to adjust player exposures than projections. Am I better off adjusting player exposures or adjusting projections by 1 point or 10%? Okay, really good question. Happy to talk about this. I think this is a better question for NBA. So let's just hover over to NBA. We'll talk a little bit about this. So, going back to your comment about, previous advice from Jordan. So what Jordan is basically saying is that, when you adjust projections in the home screen, you are affecting the player's point outputs in the sims. So if I were to adjust Giannis by, let's say, like 5 points, put him up to 62. So now every game sim that we pull for him, when he scores 60 fantasy points, you're tacking on 5 points to that. So now he scored 65 in the sim. When he scores 50, now he scored 55. So you're affecting the sim outputs a lot more by adjusting the projection, which is why Jordan typically would recommend, running a build without those adjustments, and then just telling the builder that, hey, I just want more exposure to this player, because I think, one way or the other, that's really what you're trying to do, is get more exposure to Giannis in that example, because, you think he's just a great play on this slate, given the research that you've done, and you're just not seeing him come up enough in here. So, let's see what he's coming in at. 0%. Wow. So then you're like, no, I don't want 0% of him. I want more. So, let's say, you crank it up to 25%. And then let's say you crank this up to, 50. And basically, if you continue to increase his min exposure to a level, and you get to a point where the builder says, hey, I can't meet that much exposure. We just don't have enough lineups in the pool with this player. So from that point, that's the only reason that you wouldn't just do it in the post build screen with exposures. So if you run into that issue, I recommend a couple steps. The first thing is that, you see that you have a pool of 500 right here. So the first thing I would do is I would run a new build without adjusting projections, and I would increase the pool size. You can increase it to 1,000, or the most lineups you can run at the moment is 1,500. So you would increase it to 1,500. This will give you, 3 times large size of your pool. So hopefully you can meet the exposures that you want within those parameters. If you are increasing your pool size to 1,500 and that is still not working, then I would come in and adjust the projections. I think, adjusting by 10% is more of a better solution, just because, you say adjust projections by 1 point. Well, 1 point to Giannis at, 57 and 12K salary is a lot different than 1 point at Joe Harris, 4K salary and 18 points. So the impact will be different depending on who you use. So I think 10% as a baseline is a good start. And then, if you're still not getting to him, increase his projection more, and, maybe stay with those 10% increments until you're getting enough of him in the post build phase as you want, or whether it's a group of players or not. So that's my best advice on, handling exposures versus projections. I would really try and stay away from adjusting projections until you have to. And if you have to, that's fine. I mean, if you think that, he's going to be a lot closer to his 75th percentile outcome than we think he is, then that's okay. And if you want to take a stand, I encourage you to do so. So, it's always nice to come over here and look at the percentiles and see what different players score at different percentile outcomes. So those are my thoughts there. We are going to move on to the next question. Got a question here from Ferris Madane. I believe I'm doing my best to pronounce that. So Ferris said, is it optimal to go deep in the player pool to add a player to your exposure? For example, for me to add a share of Steph Curry, I had to go to lineup 814 of 1,500. What's the right way to go about this? Okay, I really like this question. I think this is a good question. It's something that we were talking about last week, kind of building on that topic. I think it was a question from Uncrabby Cabby. And, the question last week was how do I know if the adjustments to exposures that I'm making are suboptimal. And, we kind of talked about this saying like, if you have to go really far into your pool, like bottom half or lower to go and get players, maybe you should take a step back and ask yourself, hey, why do I want this player? What is it founded in? And, you're just like, if your answer is like, Steph Curry is just a really good player and I don't want to get beat by him. And, if you want to have like so much exposure as like a cautionary thing, I mean, I understand why people do that. And what I would say is that, if you're in a build, right, we're going to use this as an example. And one thing I would like to do is check somebody's pool exposure. So if you grab your little scroll and you scroll over here, you can see somebody's pool exposure. So this exposure is what you are seeing in the number of lineups that you have listed. And then the pool exposure is showing you how often somebody comes up in your entire pool of 500 lineups. So, you can sort by this and then see like, okay, Ben Simmons is at 82% in the pool and I have 100% exposure to him. Those things kind of match up to me. And then, one thing we talked about last week was when somebody's pool exposure is lower than their ownership, but you're getting like a lot of them in your lineups, I think that can be like a little bit of like a cautionary thing. So I'm not seeing anybody who really stands out in that way, but that is something that I like to look out for. And maybe, I think Giannis is like a perfect example because we manually did it. So, his ownership is 18%. He's only showing up in the pool about 11%, but we're forcing 50% of him into our lineups. And it's like, how optimal is that really? Is that, suboptimal? Like, why do I like him? And, the answer is I don't. I just used him for the example. But let's just scroll down and then see how far in the pool we're going to get him. So, we have to go all the way to lineup 222 to get 10% of him, which is like fine. But let's say, we wanted to lock him. Let's say, we just really just loved him and thought he was a good play. Like now, how far do we have to go? Okay, 268. That's not terrible. But let's say, let's say this is like lineup 500. This is like 490 something. And it's, like, yeah, we're getting to the player we want, but we're sacrificing the strength of the lineup as a whole to do that. So, what are good ways to combat that? I think, that's what this person really asked the question for. That's what they're here for is, how do I handle that? And I think that the first question is to, ask yourself, why do you want this player? How much of this player do you really want? And then answer those things. It's like, I've done research. I've done research outside of SaberSim and I've listened to podcasts or, read this or that. And I think so-and-so is a really good play that SaberSim is undervaluing. Okay, great. You've determined that for yourself. So now the next question is, how much exposure do you want to this player? And you say, you know what? I'm building 20 lineups for tonight's slate. I want 50% of him. I want at least half of my lineups to have him. Okay, great. So then you come into the post build, you put in 50%. Let's say, the lineups that you're seeing are still really low Saber score. Okay, the best thing to do is to increase his projection in step one. So by doing this, you're basically telling the builder that, hey, I think his outcome is going to be closer to his higher percentiles, and I want to increase this. And then I want to run a new build with this taken into account. That way, he is incorporated into lineups with higher Saber scores overall. And then now what we're going to see is that we have 50% of him right out of the gate. And this 50% is in our top 20 lineups. So this is exactly what we want. The lineup, he gets worked into lineups where the lineup strength overall is much stronger. And if you have convictions about players in this way, this is how I would handle it. So I think this is the right way to go about it. And, really similar, kind of building on the last question that we just talked about. So try and handle things this way. And let me know if you guys have any more questions there. All right, got a question here from Eagles 1985. And going to get this one in the chat. Eagle said, how do you put lineups into Yahoo? Okay, so we can hover over here. Let's say, we're playing Yahoo NBA today, and, it's going to be like really similar to how you submit lineups for other sites like inside SaberSim. So first thing I would do is I would come in here to the entries, and then I would download a template file from Yahoo. I believe this will take you to a page. Let me see if I can get Yahoo up here, because I do not have anything. Neo said, it's rude not to answer the phone, Andrew. It said spam risk. What am I supposed to do? Dang spam calls. Sorry about that. But okay, so gonna get Yahoo pulled up here, and I don't have any lineups in for Yahoo at the moment, but I'll just kind of show you guys what it would look like. So if you go to Yahoo, you go to my contests, you go to upcoming. So you will have like an upcoming here, and from here you'll be able to download a CSV. I don't know that if you hit this button, if it automatically downloads it like DraftKings, because when you hit it for FanDuel, it takes you to a page, and then you have to interact with the page to get your CSV. So I'm not sure if you have to interact with Yahoo to get the CSV or not, but basically you'll download it, you'll get your entries file in here. You're just going to build lineups like you would for any site. So just run a couple lineups here. And then while this runs, I'm going to switch my screen back here. And 500 lineups are built by the time I was able to swap screens. So then boom, lineups come in. You like this lineup file. All you're going to do is you're going to come over here. You're going to fill your entries, and you're going to fill them, using unique random, unique rank, or the rank fill, however you see fit. You're going to save the lineups, and then you are going to go back to Yahoo, go back to the upcoming, and wherever you downloaded your lineups from, that's basically the same place you will upload it. So really quickly, if you come over here to our help docs, if you go to the settings on the top right, and then you hit the help, that will pull up our support page. Oops, I don't know why that's happening. So something a little funky with the screen share. I'm going to try that again. Okay, that's much better. So if you come in here to our support docs, if you go to view more, and then if you come into the top, you could type in Yahoo, and then we have this file, how to fill entries, and then Yahoo is incorporated in this. So I believe you just have to watch the video. Jordan walks through how to enter lineups for Yahoo. I would check this out. I think it's a good resource, and I would go from there. So give that a shot, but it shouldn't be too much different from the way that we do it for most other sites. So let me know if there's any follow-up there, Eagles. And if you need help, you can always email support@sabersim.com. The team is always around and willing to help out with these type of issues. If you're running into a specific issue, it's just a little harder for me to troubleshoot on stream like that. So, but anyways, we're going to get back to the questions. I see one more question in Discord for today. So got a question here from Snowman11. Snowman said, how do I upload lineups into DraftKings without saving games on DraftKings? Okay. So Snowman, not sure what you mean by saving games. So that help doc that I just showed is also for DraftKings if you need help specifically with uploading contests or lineups for contests for DraftKings. But DraftKings I could show a little better. So if I were to come in here, download, this will download the file for the specific slate that you have. You just drag this over here, and then boom, your contests load. So then you go home, you're going to make 2 projection adjustments to comply with the DraftKings terms of service, build your lineups, So we're going to get a couple lineups going here. And once these lineups load, we will fill our entries, and then we can use our handy dandy tools to just get those uploaded. So, okay. So boom, lineups built. We like them. We're going to go to fill. I typically like to use unique random, and then I'm going to fill all of those. I'm going to hit download and open DraftKings. When I do this, it's going to download the entry file, and then it's going to open DraftKings and take me right to the page where I can upload the CSV of my lineups. It'll tell you, you know, if I had 89 entries, it'll say 89 of 89 confirmed, or just like good, no errors. And then your lineups are in, and you're ready to rock and roll, ready for late swap. So, you know, the support docs, as well as, you know, the demo that we just kind of went through, should help both of you to get what you need for Yahoo and DraftKings. So let me know if there's any follow-up there. Going to jump over to YouTube chat. So I saw a question here from Neil. Stack 6 and 2. What does that mean? Okay, Neil, I saw you are here. Can you give me a little context on what sport or what where you are seeing this at? If you could do that for me, that'll help me answer the question a little more. But if I saw a question here, you know, a couple comments in the chat, like, hey, we're going to get to everyone's question in the YouTube chat. We just got through all of the Discord questions, which we like to hit first. Hopping over to YouTube, starting from the start of the stream, working down. We'll get to everyone's question, I promise. So, Neil, let's see. That's the dude above in the chat, LOL. I was asking him what he meant, disregard. Okay, got it. So, going to hit this question from Demetrius. Demetrius said, where can I find the core plays on SaberSim from Run Pure Sports? I watched the SaberSim video, and they had the core from Big T in SaberSim. Okay, so Demetrius, if you are a Run Pure subscriber, this like screen will look a little different. Instead of saying SaberSim, it'll say RPS up here. And then the Run Pure version of SaberSim has some other features. So kind of over here next to the search bar, there's a drop down, and it'll basically tell you like you could pick like a player pool. It's like a player pool filter, and it's a drop down, and it'll say, you know, Big T's core, or like Big T's player pool, or I don't know if like Hoop has a player pool, but it'll give you some different options. And you'll also be able to use like their cores and their player pools and their projections. So all of that is in an add-on that is right over here. I'm using the SaberSim version, so I don't have that here. But if you are having trouble finding it, what I would recommend is, like, if you're in the app, just come over to the settings, hit report a problem, and then say, you know, not seeing Run Pure core or player pool. And then somebody from the support team will verify that and see that. Sometimes, you know, Run Pure doesn't post it until like a certain time in the day. I'm not really certain what their like posting schedule is. So if you're in the Run Pure Discord, you can also ask in there. Some of their coordinators might be able to get back to you with an answer as to when you will see those player pools up in the app. So that's my best advice for you there. Going to keep rolling. Got a question here from RC Bremen. Said, just signed up last night. How do I upload lineup into DraftKings without first entering lineups on DraftKings? Okay, so RC Bremen, you know, just walked through how to upload lineups into DraftKings. So if you know, go on your phone and reserve lineups, or, you know, you do it on the desktop, however you do it, as long as you come in here and upload an entry file, and we have this link that'll basically do it for you, and then bring that into the app, then all of your contest information will be loaded, and you can build lineups and fill them. So if you have any more questions, you know, that's what this stream is for. You know, if you have anything like really specific that you need help with, you can always email support@sabersim.com or use the report a problem link, and our support team is very responsive, and we'll get back to you really quickly. So let me know if you have any follow-up there. Going to hit this next question from, hold on one second. Let me block some spam in the chat. And going to continue from this question from King of Smack. Says, when you go to build lineups, how do you offset it to get high exposure? And then it says just a couple questions in a row. So I'm just going to mark them all here. For NBA and NFL, how do you get the exposure to all the chalk and how do you adjust it? Like, would you put ownership fade high? Do you put correlation high on sim diversity high? How do you adjust? Followed by question, how do you adjust your lineups when building? And how do you predict it to have a high score? Okay. So King and Smack, I'm going to kind of try and hit these kind of all together here. So, I'm going to start with this middle one saying, how do you get the exposure to all the chalk? So, if you want to determine chalk and let's say, I don't know if you have a specific sport in mind, but I'm just going to assume that we're going to talk about basketball since this is what we got up. So, if you want to see who the chalk is, I would sort by ownership. If you click any of these fields, it's going to give the values to you in descending order. So based on the ownership at this point in the day, and it can still change, Ben Simmons looks pretty chalky. Kelly Oubre looks pretty chalky. And then, we go down the list, Scotty Barnes, Gordon Hayward, and then we kind of get into like this 20 range where it kind of flattens out. But I'd say, these four guys are like really, really chalk. So, let's run a build and let's see what those four players are looking like. So I had Simmons, Hayward, I believe, Oubre. And what you can also do is like in your build screen, you can also sort by ownership, and then you can see how much of the highest owned players you're getting. So Simmons, we're over the field on him. Kelly Oubre Jr., we're over the field on him. Barnes, we're about matching. And then Hayward, we are over the field in our first 20 lineups out of 500. If we want to see like what the pool looks like as a whole. So it looks like we like Simmons more than his ownership in the pool of 500. We like Oubre more. Scotty Barnes is still about even. And then we like Hayward. So our pool exposures are pretty much reflecting what our exposures of our top 20 lineups are looking like, which is great. So then let's say, you wanted all the chalk and, you want to get to Scotty Barnes. You want to get to like these four pieces over 50%. So all you would do is you would come in here in min exposures and then you would set it to 50 or whatever value you want. And then that will find more lineups with those players in them. You can adjust as many exposures as you want in this screen. And if you adjust too many, a message will pop up saying we couldn't meet your exposures. Either turn off the recent changes that you made or rerun your pool. And then if you're going to rerun your pool, I would increase your pool size to hopefully meet those exposures. So that's how you do that. Your other question, when you build lineups, how do you offset it to get high exposures? So, if you want to increase the exposures of some players, all you got to do is just increase this min exposure field to do that. And then last question was, how do you adjust your lineups when building and how do you predict it to have a high score? Okay, so the way that we sort our lineups by default is by a metric that we created called SaberScore. It's, the best definition is right here. If you hover over SaberScore, it says SaberScore is our way of quantifying the impact of upside, correlation, and ownership on the strength of a lineup. The higher the SaberScore, the higher the upside potential for DFS tournaments. So because SaberSim, understands correlation, ownership fade, and works in sim diversity, which is just, how diverse your lineups are from each other in your pool. We understand those things really well. We balance them, and then we work those into your lineups. And then after the lineups are built, SaberScore goes through your pool of 500 and grades them all. And we grade them based on, those three metrics combined. If you want to use something like projected score, you can hit this drop down and change it to projected score. If you want to see, this will be like projected score descending. And then if you want to see, some ownership, you can also see some ownership descending. So all of these things, if you like want to value max salary builds, you could do that as well. So we have a couple options for if people want to like try out different things. I think it's totally okay to use any of the above methods. We prefer SaberScore. It's defaulted to that. because that's a metric that we really believe in. So let me know if you have any more questions. Happy to get to them all, but going to keep scrolling here. Manny said to infinity and beyond. Let's go, Andrew. What's up, Manny? Happy you were able to catch the stream at the new time. Just, getting in the Halloween spirit is all. So got this next question here from Richard Riley. Richard said, question about the DFS profit plan. When entering approximately 5% per slate, how does that work cross sites? Is that 5% total between FanDuel and DraftKings if playing, for example, the Monday night showdown? And to follow up, 5% per slate isn't necessarily per night. So if playing NBA and NFL showdown the same night, those would be two different slates, correct? Okay, so Richard, you're on the right path here. So when we say 2.5% to 5%, that is like per correlated slate. So if you're playing the 7-game NBA main slate and then you're also playing it on FanDuel and Yahoo, that would be 5% total because the same games are being used in all of those slates. So your outcomes are pretty much going to be like correlated to one another. It's really unlikely that you're going to do like really, really bad on DraftKings and then just bink on FanDuel, which can happen due to like salary and positional things, but like that's kind of beside the point. The point is that the same players and the same games are being used for each site. So you want to only use like 2.5 to 5% total for all of your contests that include those games. And like you said, if you're playing NFL Showdown and NBA, those are like two different sports. So you can approach those completely differently. I will say that Showdown is like NFL Showdown is the most variant version of NFL. I myself like to dial my bankroll down significantly when playing NFL Showdown. We've seen it like time and time again already this season. You just have like a guy that's in a smash spot, and because it's one game of football, it's so variant and guys get hurt. And the perfect example is like last Thursday, Mark Andrews was in like a really good spot and he got hurt in the second quarter and was out for the rest of the game. Nyheim Hines, when Jonathan Taylor was out, first drive of the game, gets a concussion, out for the rest of the game at like really, really high ownership. So, anything can happen in one single game of football. I would recommend playing somewhere closer to like 1% to 2% on NFL Showdown, just like in general. But to answer your question, yeah, if you're playing two different sports on the same day, you could do 5% and 5%. Or if you're playing like, if it's like the NFL Sunday and you're playing the early only and then the afternoon only, because none of those games are on both slates, you can also probably do 5% in both if you want to get more action that way. So just some general guidelines for the DFS profit plan there. Let me know if you have any follow-up. Okay. I saw a comment from King of Smack, said, thanks, man. That was very helpful. Happy to help any way I can. And then there was a follow-up. I'm going to get to Neil's question, but I'm going to hit this follow-up from King of Smack. One more question. Would you use the 25%, 50%, 75%, 85%? Which one would you use for better exposure? Okay, good question. So I think that, when thinking about exposure to players, I think it's important to, okay. And then by the way, you mentioned these specific numbers. So what I think you might be referring to is the percentiles. So these percentiles do not have to do with exposure, which is like what you mentioned in your question. So I just want to, do a clarification. What this does is it sets the player's projection to their, 75th percentile outcome in the Sims. So if you go home and you see the player stats over here on the right, so this is like, this 38.78 is Ben Simmons' average points scored in the Sims across our entire pool of Sims. And then this is what we're saying, his 75th percentile outcome is like something that happens, 1 in 4 times, scores 44.5. And then 95th would be like something he does 1 out of 20 times, which are like his like higher upside games. So if you're in a build and you set, so let's just, if you set, this to like 95th, what it will do is it will overwrite all of the mean projections and then put the players' projections where they have their 95th percentile outcome to like quote unquote build for upside. We don't love this metric, mostly because not every single player in a lineup has to have their 95th percentile outcome for you to win. Oftentimes, a set of players will have like really high upside outcomes, and then another set of players might have like something closer to their like 75th to 85th, where they're still like above average, but they're not like the pieces that really got it there. So a lot of times you'll see that like looking through winning lineups that, this one guy had like his 99th percentile outcome, and then a couple guys also had like 95th, and then you'll see like it's more of a mix. It's not like a hard and fast everyone had to have their 95th. So we're going to be coming out with some new lineup sorting metrics that will kind of combat this. It's been quite the challenge for us to kind of figure it out, but we think it's going to be a much better use overall. So I would highly recommend keeping this as average. And then if you are looking to make adjustments to exposures, I don't really like to think of exposure adjustments the same for every player, because having Ben Simmons at 25% ownership, at 25% exposure when his ownership is 43 is a lot different than having Kevin Huerter at 12% ownership at 25% exposure. So what I'm trying to say is that I like to think of exposure in relation to a player's ownership. And if you say, I want to play a lot of Ben Simmons, 40% might sound like a lot, but that's about the amount of lineups in your contest that we're predicting to have Ben Simmons. So try and think of exposure more as leverage, and which is why we have this leverage column. So if you sort by leverage, you can see where you're getting more of a player in your lineups than the field is projected to have that player. So, we have this like 100% exposure to Taylor Horton Tucker, which I think there's probably something wrong with his ownership at this point in the day. A lot of time for Sims still to run, but in a world where this ownership is correct, if nobody has him and then you have him in all 20 of your lineups, your leverage is way, way higher than the field. So, you kind of have to like look at your exposure and kind of balance your leverage and say, your leverage is really going to tell you where your stands are on the day. Like, okay, I'm playing Gordon Hayward in 75% of my lineups. The field, I'll only have him in about a quarter. So, this is like your leverage plays or your guys that you're like really, really rooting for. And then the same with your negative leverage plays. Like, hey, do I really not want to have anybody healed and have this much negative leverage to him? So those are like the areas that I would focus on if I was building lineups for a contest, saying, am I comfortable taking stands on these guys that I have this much leverage on? And that's where I would recommend spending most of your time in the post build, is kind of managing your leverage, managing your risk overall. So let me know if you have any questions there. Going to hit this question from Neil. Neil said, NFL Showdown Strat, I've been running a cash build to find the optimal projected lineup and using this as a baseline for how much salary to leave on the table in large field. Thoughts on this strategy? And then follow up from Neil. Yeah, I've been losing constantly in Showdown, so it's so variant. It's crazy. That's why I generally only play the $1.20 max just for a sweat. And okay, I think this kind of, builds on the DFS profit plan question that we were just talking about. So, I think Showdown is really variant, and I kind of just expressed that to you guys, saying like, I dialed down my own bankroll for that exact reason. And Showdown is like a very, very interesting game because you want to win, but you want to when you win, you want to have a lineup that is duplicated lightly. So as soon as you start trying to duplicate less, you're kind of usually moving away from higher salary lineups or higher projected lineups in an attempt to get more of the prize pool when you do win. So, I guess like the point is that the wins in NFL Showdown can be far or few and far in between, and it's totally normal, I'd say, to like lose very often in Showdown. You're really just looking for that like one time where you can win and have a lightly duplicated lineup, and that will pay hopefully for your entire season of NFL Showdown. So I would continue to exercise bankroll management, which it sounds like you're doing by only playing the $1.20 max. Continue to exercise bankroll management. Continue to try and, I would say, continue to use like the single game simulations. So when you're playing NFL Showdown, we'll hover over there and talk about tonight's a little bit. Just remember that, we have an entire database of sims. And when you build for NFL Showdown at 0010 settings, we are pulling random game sims and building your lineups based on the optimals from our game sims. So you should know that every lineup you have is backed with a game sim that had that outcome. So, that makes me feel like a lot more comfortable rather than just using a traditional optimizer that's just randomizing for projected points or all of these rules that you have to put in. Knowing that the sims back up the lineups I'm getting makes me feel a lot stronger going into the tournaments. Overall, I would say that, just looking at the question one more time, ways to get unique. I know Max talked about this. If you didn't see Max's video, so Max Steinberg, high stakes pro partner at DFS, took down a Thursday night Showdown, the flagship, $1 million, solo shipped it. And he came on and talked about his process after the fact. And it was a great video. We did he walked through his entire process. I would highly recommend checking out the video if you haven't seen it. I'm going to pull it up right now on stream to show you guys it, but let me just find it really quickly here. And let's see. Okay, found it. So it says, Max Steinberg joins to discuss his Millie Maker victory. This was in Showdown. Max gave a bunch of great nuggets about Showdown strategy overall in this video. Highly recommend checking it out. It's something that I've watched a couple times myself. Max is a really, really strong player and continues to have great results. So if you're going to listen to anybody, listen to Max Steinberg 100%. And let me know, check that out. Let me know if you have any follow-up once you do that. But I'm going to bring SaberSim back here. Let me see if I am missing anything here. So, Neil said, yeah, I like having a sweat, but I expect to get 0 back, especially with the way I play. Got to get weird to avoid these dupes for sure. And, that's why bankroll management is so important. But there was the Theory of DFS podcast, the one that Jordan did an interview on about, I'd say a month ago. There was a recent episode, and I think the title of the episode was, you look stupid until you're not. And that's kind of the approach it sounds like you have, Neil. So you just keep grinding away. If you're interested in studying winning players' lineups, there is a free Roto Grinders tool called Results DB, as in database. And you can go to any Showdown slate and see and type in, Giant Squid, type in M Steinberg 09, type in, any person you think you would consider a good player, and you can kind of see what their lineups look like. People have differing opinions about whether that is useful or not. Personally, I think it's useful if you look at a large sample and just, I'm not trying to dissect what each person did in an individual lineup, but, look at different people's portfolios of lineups. And I think it'll give you like some insightful tips if that's something that you're interested in doing. So those are my thoughts on Showdown there. Let's see if we have any more questions. See a question here from Robbie Morris. Say, can you explain why players with multi-positional eligibility is so advantageous in NBA? Thanks. Okay. There's a question we haven't talked about yet. So happy to talk about this one. So I would say, what it really does is that, and especially for players using tools like SaberSim or, I guess other optimizers as well. So what the multi-positional eligibility does is that instead of like a hand builder who is just kind of weighing these factors in their head, a tool like any optimizer really can now it has basically more lineups that it can build or more ways to get better lineups due to the positional eligibility. So, if you see this, I mean, Ben Simmons can be used at all these positions, and, every single player for, the couple hundred players on the slate. Like, this isn't really something I could balance in my head and kind of figure out, well, if I use Ben Simmons in the small forward spot versus the point guard, then I can do this with my lineup. But that is something that optimizers can do really, really well. And it's something that SaberSim can do really, really well. So, the more positional eligibility somebody has, I think like the more of a quote unquote like jack of all trades the player can be. Like, he can be your point guard, he can be your small forward, he can, go in your utility spot. So you just have a lot more ways to use certain players, and the optimizers can really take advantage of that and kind of maximize a player's efficiency when they do make it into your lineup. So those are my thoughts there on positional eligibility. Something we haven't talked about, so really happy to touch on it, Robbie. Okay, so Neil said, yeah, so that's kind of my question. Is building the cash optimal a good way to determine how much salary to leave on the table? Yesterday, the optimal left almost 2K on the table, so I tried to use lineups that left at least 2K on the table. Okay, so Neil, I will say that it's not something I do personally, so I can't really speak too much on it today, but I know it is something that Jordan likes to do on the Run Pure stream. So every Thursday prior to the NFL Showdown, we do a joint stream, SaberSim and Run Pure, about how to use the SaberSim app, and it's a Run Pure stream. So Jordan does it with, I believe, AP from Run Pure, and I know that is something that they do. So let me talk to Jordan about it. I'll talk to Jordan offline and then come back tomorrow and kind of tell you, what he thinks are like the pros and cons of doing that approach. Because, I'm not going to discount anything that anybody else is doing just because I don't do it myself. But, I can't really speak on its use case until I kind of know why somebody else is doing it. So I'd be really interested to talk to Jordan about it offline, kind of hear what his thoughts are for, why he does it and what he gets out of it. And then I will start tomorrow's stream off with a follow-up to that. So, I'm just going to, cash builds for Showdown. I'm going to make a note of this and then talk to him offline. But let me see, what the potential use cases are there, and then I'll follow up on it first thing tomorrow. So my best advice there. And I saw, you said no. Awesome. Didn't know about that stream. Thanks, man. So, yep. Happy to get back to you. And, I don't want to talk about something that I'm not too familiar with when I know other people on the team are. So I see RC Bremen said, thank you. Just got my lineup on DK. Perfect. Awesome. King of Smack said, I see Giant Squid at the top all the time. Dude's a ghost. I believe the correct term is that the dude is a robot. So that's a joke that we like to say. Giant Squid is indeed a robot, not human. But anyways, if anybody has any more questions, get them in the queue now. That was our last question in the YouTube chat. Looks like we got through all the Discord questions as well. Not seeing anything else coming in. The only follow-up I have is that, this show is going to continue to be at this time slot. So, hope everyone enjoys the move and makes it more likely for people to join in, get their questions answered. But, not seeing any more questions. We'll be right back here tomorrow. We're going to get the emails out to all of the Max Challenge winners. Congratulations again to Seminole DFS and Kelvin Dubs, our winners for week 8. If you're not in on the weekly Max Challenge, there is still a time to participate. So that being said, everybody, I will see you all tomorrow and take care.